Let him watch. Part 1. During a quick fuck outside the bar, Celia finds she likes being watched. Dwight had been watching me from behind the bar all evening. I marveled at the way he could effortlessly make drinks while remaining laser-focused on my body. Of course, the outfit I'd chosen was meant to draw his attention. Although it was far from practical, I'd worn a dangerously short skirt to work. Even more impractical was my decision to forego panties. But Dwight and I had fucked for the first time a few days ago, and I wanted to be ready when the occasion arose for us to do it again. That occasion happened to arise at 9:30. Dwight met my eyes, then nodded toward the narrow hallway off the bar. He was taking his 15-minute break and wanted me to join him. It was quiet that Wednesday, so I felt okay about asking Mona to cover my tables. She flashed a knowing grin and said, "No problem, Celia." Before I slipped down the hallway which led to the back door, my gaze fell upon Arthur. He was lingering over a Crown and Coke while reading something on his phone. Though Arthur was one of my best customers, I sometimes worried about him spending so many evenings at the bar. He never drank to excess, and he never tried to approach anyone. Instead, he seemed content to relax in a small corner booth and chat with me. He usually arrived straight from the office, still wearing a suit with the tie loosened. I guessed he was around 50, but grief made him look older. He'd recently revealed that his wife passed away last year. His blue eyes filled with tears as he described how lost he felt without her. Studying him now, I felt a rush of compassion for the man. His dark hair was threaded with silver, and his face appeared haggard. From our brief conversations, I gathered that he didn't sleep much. Arthur usually stayed until 10, so I figured he'd be okay with me disappearing for a few minutes. Sensing my hesitation, Mona shooed me away. "It's well past time for your break, too," she said. "Hope you enjoy it." Even as I blushed at her sly wink, I hurried to find Dwight. He was waiting for me outside. Behind the building. The light beside the back door provided enough illumination for me to easily see his smile. "Looking for someone?" he asked. In response, I rushed to him. As soon as I was within reach, he grabbed me. Our kiss was hard, almost bruising in its hunger. I moaned when he backed me up against the brick wall. His hands were all over me, lifting my top and then taking my breasts from them. As he lowered his head to draw my between his lips, he slid a palm along my inner thigh. His own moan, though muffled by my tit, revealed his excitement at the discovery that I started rocking my hips, grinding my against Dwight's hand. All the while, I was alert to any sound that signaled someone approaching. The sweet scent of honeysuckle drifted to me from a nearby vacant lot. "I know exactly what you want," Dwight growled in my ear. "You show up here looking like a naughty slut, with your bear practically on display." He yanked up my skirt so that it was bunched around my waist. "You want my don't you, Celia?" "Yes," I shamelessly told him. "I'm already so wet for you." As Dwight hurried to take out his, he seemed wild with his own need. Once he had his right arm hooked under my left leg, he entered me with a thrust so powerful that it momentarily robbed me of breath. Then he cupped my ass in his palms, squeezing my flesh while taking me hard and fast, though I wanted to scream from the intensity of my pleasure. I managed to stay quiet except for my faint moans. Dwight buried his face in my neck. I felt his lips and tongue, and the scratch of his short beard on my skin. Closing my eyes, I reveled in the way he insistently pumped his hips. I even loved the sensation of the brick wall digging into my back. Despite the breeze, my face soon grew warm, and strands of my dark blonde hair clung to my cheeks. With my head turned to the side, I smiled. I'd been dying for this all night. Dwight had clearly been aching for it, too. His breath was hot as he whispered all kinds of filthy things to me. When I finally opened my eyes, I couldn't suppress a startled. Arthur stood about 10 feet away, and while shadows concealed part of his face, I was able to see that he looked both apologetic and helpless to turn from the scene before him. I also sensed his growing lust as he lowered his stare from my face to Dwight's, claiming my. Dwight must have felt me tense, for he lifted his head. At the sight of Arthur, he froze mid-fuck, still buried inside me. To his credit, he tried his best to shield my body from view. "Get the fuck out of here," he snarled. Arthur didn't move. Instead, he looked at me again and murmured, "I'm sorry, Celia. Mona told me you were on break, but I wanted to say goodbye before I left, and I thought, you thought you'd just wander back here to find her?" Dwight's features twisted with fury. "I'll say it one more time, get the fuck out of here." He started to withdraw from me, but I held him fast. "It's okay," I heard myself tell him in what sounded like a stranger's voice. Dwight stared at me in confusion until I added, "Let him watch if he wants." Arthur's sharp intake of breath carried over to us. Lifting an eyebrow, Dwight gave me a devilish grin. "Oh, you are a naughty little, aren't you?" With those words, his thrusts quickly grew more fervent, and I couldn't muffle my cries. Locking eyes with Arthur, I wondered if he could hear the sound of my wit taking every inch of Dwight's. While maintaining the same distance from us, Arthur began stroking himself through his pants. I eagerly nodded, letting him know I wanted to see more. So many evenings, I'd seen this man immersed in sadness, but he was now consumed by fierce arousal. The sight made my knees weaken, and Dwight had to hold me upright. "Please," I begged both men. While Dwight's hands kept me fixed in place, Arthur's hot stare had its own weight. I felt spellbound, completely at their mercy. Dwight glanced over at Arthur. "You like seeing me pound her pussy, so much?" Arthur replied in a guttural voice. He jerked faster, his hand pumping away at. His lips were parted, and he tilted his head back slightly while regarding me with heavy-lidded eyes. He looked like a man who had utterly abandoned himself to lust. I doubted any of us would stop if someone were to suddenly walk through the bar's back door. Arthur let out a choked cry just before he came. The very moment I saw a rope of his semen spurt forth and land on the pavement between us, I succumbed to my own climax. I had to press my lips tightly together to keep from screaming. Dwight groaned, unable to withstand my orgasmic contractions. While I was impaled on his cock, he erupted inside me. I could feel him pulsing deep within my tender. Arthur, now spent, continued languidly stroking. The smile on his face made him look 10 years younger. Finally, Dwight set me back on my feet. During the gentle kiss he and I shared, Arthur turned from us to put away. "We should get back inside," Dwight murmured against my lips. "I need a couple more minutes." "Tell Mona I'll be right there." Only when Dwight let me slip from his embrace did Arthur approach us. I couldn't help but grin when he held out a clean handkerchief. "You might need this." As he spoke, he kept his gaze fixed on the ground, granting me the privacy I'd willingly surrendered before. "Arthur, thank you." My face burned hotter while I wiped between my thighs. Already, I could feel Dwight seeping out of me. "I should have pulled out," Dwight said quietly. "I'm sorry I got carried away, Celia, and I should have worn panties," I muttered. Arthur laughed low and soft, which made me giggle as I finished straightening my clothes. Even Dwight was smiling on his way toward the back door. Glancing over his shoulder, he asked, "You sure you'll be okay out here?" "I'll be fine." After he'd gone back inside, I turned to Arthur. "Thank you again," I told him with a sheepish grin, glad I could help. Holding my stare, he added, "Thanks for letting me watch." Something in his eyes, and his voice, sent a surge of lust through me. I was glad when he looked away, for I feared my own eyes would reveal my rekindled arousal. "Dwight and I have never done that before," I said. "I mean, we've fucked before, but not at work." "I don't want you to think I don't," Arthur said firmly. Again, our gazes met, and he regarded me with tenderness. "I think you're a lovely young woman, Celia. And I think Dwight is one lucky man. I wish you both the best." I had the sudden urge to slip my arms around Arthur and hold him close. Maybe it was because I'd been so vulnerable in front of him just moments ago, and he'd made me feel safe and desired the entire time, or maybe it was because he'd shown a side of himself that I'd never before imagined. Even now, the memory of him stroking his cock sent a delicious warmth through my core. He was old enough to be my father, but I couldn't deny my growing attraction to him. While I resisted the urge to embrace him, I rushed to say, "Dwight and I aren't a couple. He just got out of a serious relationship and isn't looking for another one. And since we work together, I don't want to complicate things. I understand, Arthur replied. He took a step toward me, and then another, but I was the one who closed the distance between us. He didn't try to kiss me or even touch me. Instead, he merely smiled and said, "Maybe there's a way for all three of us to benefit from your uncomplicated arrangement." I had no idea what Arthur was about to suggest, yet my pulse quickened at his words. It was as if my body already intuited what this man wanted. I hoped my smile hid my nervous anticipation. Somehow, I kept my voice steady as I told him, "I'm listening."